You're listening to the Pigskin Cafe, a podcast covering the wild world of college football. On tap for today are hot takes, controversy, and analysis on your favorite team. Here's your host, Hampton Sipper, in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back into the Pigskin Cafe. My name is Hampton Sipper, and I got Mr. Graham Haney joining me today. Chase couldn't join because, unfortunately, he is working, which I don't think is a very valid excuse, but whatever. We'll allow it for this somber podcast that we're about to have. But before we dive in to the two college football playoff semifinal games that we witnessed yesterday, I want to tell you, if this is the first time you were checking out the Pigskin Cafe, thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and hit that notification bell. And be sure to follow us on social media. We love interacting with all of you guys on there. It's been a heck of a college football season, and unfortunately, we have one game left, and even more unfortunately, that game does not include our favorite team, the Alabama Crimson Tide. We're going to start by breaking down the Alabama-Michigan game. Alabama falls 27-20 in overtime. Michigan comes out victorious. And Graham, I think there's a lot to unpack here in this game, and really, I just want to kind of give it to you. And you can go any direction with it, but I want to start with this question. What was the main or the primary reason that Alabama lost this football game?
Yeah, glad to be back with you, Hampton. Sad day. In America, especially for those of you that live in
America,
the great country of Alabama. I mean, football just means a lot down here. And, I'm wearing black in morning. Hampton, I think you're wearing black or at least navy out of respect.
Navy. I think it's navy. I am colorblind, so who knows?
That's true. Out of respect for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Just to start off with your question, why did Alabama lose yesterday against Michigan? I think it's more complex than it is simple, but I think in the simplest terms, it is Alabama played an unclean football game. That's just probably the easiest way to say it. The execution was poor on offense and defense. I think for defense, there was a lot of miscommunication. They shifted, formations a lot, which allowed open receivers, especially the running back, several times. And it seems like we never really figured that out. For the offense, I mean, I don't think you cannot put all the blame on Jalen Milroe. You also can't put all the blame on Seth McLaughlin. But man, I think you can put all of the blame on Nick Saban. I think from a perspective of an Alabama fan that has watched numerous national championship teams put on the field by Nick Saban and the University of Alabama, the one this year, and especially the one last night, was not anywhere close to what I would consider a national championship team. That might be a hot topic. That might be a hot take, but I think that's the truth of the matter, is when you look back at seasons past of 2009 Alabama, you look back at 2020 and 2021 Alabama, I think you see completely different teams than the one you saw this year. The team this year, not that growing is bad in any form, because you want teams to get better as the season goes on. But the team started out so much lower than I think everybody anticipated and expects from an Alabama team. So, yes, there was exponential growth, but I feel like we took a step back in the Rose Bowl yesterday, and just a simple fact that we were playing like it relied on one person to make all the plays. And I think that's kind of why I put a good amount of the blame on Jalen Milroe. He is not exclusively to blame. The offensive line gets a fair share of the blame as well on offense. But man, I think there were several moments where Jalen Milroe tried to make a little bit too much happen. And whenever the pressure is coming in like it did, especially that first half, and the offensive line's not playing well, Get the ball out of your hand. Make it quick. Even if it's an incompletion, it's better than losing 13 yards, especially on the first play of the game. Get rid of it, which I thought we did a good job of. We saw Jalen Milroe at least grow out of that from the beginning of the year playing Texas to now. But I felt like we regressed. I felt like we got back to it's the biggest game of the year. It has to go on his back. And I don't think that's fair to him. I don't think that's fair to the team. But I also think that that's partially his fault. I think that's him trying to do too much with not enough happening. You know the offensive line is to blame, but what do we do about that? Okay, the offensive line struggles to block. Let's get the ball out of our hands, even if it's an incomplete pass. And so I like the way that we ran the ball, especially on first down. I feel like we did not do enough of that. Yeah, I think just from a heartbroken, just a somber Alabama fan, just disappointed. And I don't think that it's disappointing because we didn't meet expectations because, like I said, this team wasn't a national championship quality team, in my opinion. And so they would have exceeded expectations tremendously if they were to have won against Michigan and then go on to win the national championship. Because it's a young team, there's a lot of development that still needs to occur. But man, I think the just easiest way to describe it, and then I'll pass it over to you, Hampton, is we wet the bed. I mean, I think whenever it was clutch time, we didn't show up, and I think that we made adjustments, which was good. But for a team like Michigan that wasn't going to beat themselves, and I think it was tremendous that Alabama got one turnover on the fumble on the punt. I think that really changed the game in ways that Alabama couldn't expect it. And that fumble was big, the play calling was big, but overall, I think there's players that try to do too much, and ultimately it's a team game, and we need everybody to play up to standard. And there were several guys, offense and defense, that did not play up to standard. Credit to Will Reichert, he had a great game, very clutch. I mean, every field goal he had right on the money. So at least give credit where credit's due. Burnham had a great game too, punting the ball. So
Absolutely.
Hate that Alabama season is over, but we got to be truthful. We got to be truthful with what happened, or we'll never learn from it. So, Hampton, I'll pose the same question to you. What do you think was the reason Alabama? What reason caused Alabama to lose, and who gets the blame for it?
Well, before I kind of dive into that, I do want to give credit to Michigan. They were a much better team than I gave them credit for. Now, I pegged Alabama to win by 10-14, which is by no means a blowout. I didn't think from the jump it would be like Alabama was vastly superior. I did think eventually, late, Alabama would score and kind of pull away from them and make it a 10-14 point margin of victory, which they almost did, which we'll get to here in a minute. On your point that Alabama was not a national championship quality team, I would agree that I think this was the ceiling for this team. I think Nick Saban, that coaching staff, did everything they could to get every ounce of talent out of this team. But we say they're not a national championship quality team when they were literally one play away from potentially going to the national championship. So, and again, that's football. But what I'm saying is they were that close. And usually, and I'll give credit to Jimmy Stein on this, and he said it: when you're a play away, usually you're a player away. And I do think, especially offensively, we might have been missing a dude or two that we could have really depended on in the clutch. And another thing that I'll give credit to him on while I'm on the Jimmy Stein train, and I kind of thought this going into the year, sort of. I compared this team to 2015, but in all actuality, this team has a lot of parallels to 2014, from the quarterback questions, from how the quarterbacks performed throughout the year, what their strengths were. Very similar. Both Blake Sims and Jalen Milroe, great deep ball throwers, iffy on some other stuff. And then in the end, they came up against the Big Ten champion who was better than them. I mean, Michigan was
Very physical on both sides of the ball. Very
very
physical.
physical on both sides of the ball. I mean, Michigan was the better team yesterday. It was not like I did not leave that game saying, "Oh, this is Ole Miss 2015, where Alabama turned the ball over 5 times and just consistently beat themselves." Even though there were situational plays in that game where they did make a mental mistake and it led to success for Michigan. But I mean, Michigan kind of dominated the game, especially in the first half. I mean, Alabama was very fortunate to be down 3 going into half. And I'll start on when Michigan had the ball. I thought they did a great job of, like you said, being ultra physical on the lines of scrimmage, but also schematically, what they did mixing up formations and different personnel groupings, going heavy with 12 tight ends. They did a lot of bunch sets where they would put our man coverage principles in conflict and get wide open guys, like on that first touchdown, how they leaked Corum out of the backfield. And basically, they picked off, like Deontay Lawson tried to pass it off to Jahad Campbell, and he got picked. I mean, that's good play calling. They didn't call the penalty. It's good play calling. And there were multiple times that they did that in passing situations, but also the way that they mixed up their running game and varied it to the point where they did a lot of motion where they would have almost 2 guys pulling with how they influence motion. So a lot of eye candy and a lot that a linebacker in the secondary has to process. And they had a lot of success on the edges. But what's crazy, though, is when you're watching the game, you're kind of feeling like, man, Alabama's defense is on its heels a little bit. And they were. In the second half, man, they were flat out incredible until that final drive. They held, before that final drive, I think they had held Michigan to 23 yards of total offense. They came up big on the fumble that Milroe had, which, believe me, we'll get to in a minute. I'll get to that in a minute. But, I mean, the field goal that they ultimately missed, I mean, they really stymied their running game. Like, I think Michigan had 100, let me double fact check, 130 yards rushing on 32 carries, 4.1 average. And if you, again, you can't take it out of the equation. I'm just saying for context, 25 of those yards came on 2 carries in overtime. So in regulation, Alabama held Michigan to 100 yards. I mean, that's winning football, especially with a team that prides itself on physicality and prides itself on the run game. So I think the defense played maybe a B game. I don't think they played outstanding. I thought the adjustments they made after halftime were really good, but when it mattered, they let Michigan go down the field and then they let them go down in overtime. I don't know if that was fatigue because they were put in a lot of unfavorable positions in the first half, going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out on offense. I mean, Alabama's offense, I believe, went 3 and out 5 times. I mean, that is not a recipe for success if you want to sustain that intensity and physicality on the defensive side of the ball. But ultimately, I think Michigan had a good plan, and J.J. McCarthy, when the time came, he stepped up. I mean, that final drive, he was money and he was composed, poised, and he looked like he had been there before. And he had a 91.8 QBR, threw for 227, 3 tuds. Credit to him and credit them on that side of the ball for taking advantage. But I do not lie or lay this game at the feet of the defense. I think they did more than enough. More than enough. I mean, they were really the reason that Alabama stayed in the game.
Yeah.
Now let's switch to offense. And before I switch to offense, let me say on defense, and just as general, like I'm going to criticize some players here. I'm not criticizing them as individuals. I'm criticizing their level of play in this game. I love and support everybody that wears that script day, and no one is above criticism, not even Nick Saban, because I don't think, like you say, Graham, I don't think this was his best game either. Go ahead.
And we're not saying that we could do better than them. Let's also put that
No,
out. We are not Division I athletes.
If I could do better than them, I would be out there. I'd be in the NFL right now. But clearly, as I'm sitting in my guest bedroom, that is not the case.
Exactly.
So, yeah, great point. But everybody deserves criticism. And I didn't think Dallas Turner played particularly well yesterday. He's supposed to be a game wrecker on that side of the ball. I thought Kool-Aid had a couple questionable moments in coverage. I didn't think Deontay Lawson played his best game. He didn't look healthy. Honestly, he didn't look healthy. Still, even after a 3 or 4 week layoff. But let's transition to offense. Yes, the O-line, I want to start with the O-line. Yes, the O-line did not play great. But in the run game, Alabama ran the ball for 40 times, or ran the ball 40 times for 170 yards. That's more than good enough. That's more than good enough against a stout defensive line like Michigan. But then it's even more impressive when you factor in that there were 6 sacks that go against that total. That probably takes away about 30 yards. So you're looking at a performance 34 carries for about 200 yards. Against that D-line, I am taking that every day of the week and twice on Monday when we played the game. So I think the O-line and the run game actually did a really good job. I thought they were physical. Pass protection was another issue, but this comes into a more macro view of everything when it comes to the O-line. I don't think they were just straight up getting whooped.
Lots
Maybe
of,
once or twice
yeah.
they got whipped in pass protection. But a lot of it was what Michigan was doing with their blitz packages and how they were disguising that. And that goes on the O-line. I think the center has a lot to do with setting protections, but it also goes on your quarterback. As a quarterback, you have to know where blitzers are coming from, where you have an unblocked man, so
Yeah.
that you can account for it and that you can make a play when the time comes and beat them when they blitz. You make them pay for blitzing you. And time and time and time again throughout that whole game, Jalen Milroe simply did not make Michigan pay for blitzing.
We
It's
threw,
just go ahead.
I believe we threw one screen the entire game at least I recall, and that was out of the receiver. Yeah, no, I take that back. There was at least 2, but
There were
one of them
2,
was,
and they were the
yeah,
same player.
yeah,
And the one right before the half was actually a great call. They caught him in a blitz. Finn made a great play.
yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like I'm talking about Alabama's offense. Michigan's defense was very impressive in this game. Like they're a legit unit. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. But yeah, with Alabama didn't call a whole lot of screens, but there were plenty of times that, and this is my main criticism with Jalen Milroe, is that when teams blitz him or the pre-snap aspect of his game is sorely lacking. Knowing where to go with the ball instantly on a play like that, you do not have time to stand back there and process and diagnose the defense when they're blitzing you. You've got to know pre-snap where I need to set my eyes so that as soon as I get the ball, I'm ready to throw. You don't have time to go 1-2 when they blitz a lot of the time. And people can say, oh, well, Tommy Rees was sending them all 4 verticals the whole game. That is absolutely not true and not the case. It's not. It's just not. There were plenty of times he could swing it to the back. He could swing it to a guy streaking in front of him, and he simply did not. And there are countless examples of that throughout the game. You factor that in with we had no deep ball going for us, no vertical passing game. We tried to call a few deep shots. It did not work. And instead of saying, oh, my first read is covered, Jalen Milroe threw the ball anyway. He threw the ball anyway. He didn't go to his second read. He didn't look to his check down, and he didn't take off and run with the ball. When you do that and you're already having a lot of drive killers with sacks, you're going to make yourself even more inefficient because you cannot afford to have wasted plays, which when you're chucking it deep into really tight coverage and the probability of you catching that ball and making a play is less than 10%, that is a wasted play. And time again, that is what happened in the passing game. And so all these people were clamoring for Tommy Rees to make adjustments, and he did a lot in right before the half, and then in the second half with moving the pocket and trying to call in quick hitters to get the ball out quick for Jalen Milroe. But again, with the pre-snap reading of the defense and knowing where to go the ball, a lot of the time he didn't have his eyes in the right place, which led to him getting sacked or led to a negative play. And that is a problem. No matter how well you run the ball, in games like this, your quarterback has to make basic reads and basic throws to make them pay for blitzing you and get them out of that. And Alabama did not, Jalen Milroe did not do that throughout the game. And another big adjustment that Tommy Rees made in the second half, he said, we're simply not going to throw the ball as much. I mean, we threw the ball in the final drive, but before that, it was very run oriented as an offense, just like it was when Alabama played Tennessee. Jalen Milroe struggled in that first half. And then in the second half, everyone's like, oh, Jalen Milroe had a good game. And he did. He had a nice deep ball and he had a couple other good throws. But what we really did was just took the ball out of his hands and ran the ball. And that was the big thing that stood out to me in the second half is I don't think Tommy Rees fully trusted his quarterback.
Mm.
And then there were lanes for him to take off and run when there was a passing play there and there was nothing open. He wasn't decisive enough. Shout out to Graham, another Graham who listens to the show. He looked like a baby deer out there sometimes trying to run the ball. There was only one run where he looked super decisive and it was like, I think it was right before the fourth quarter where they motioned a guy. It was very similar to the play we ran against Georgia to ice the game. He motions guy, fakes to him, goes up the middle. That was the most decisive he looked all game, doing anything, whether it be run or throw. And so it is hard to have a successful offense against a team like that if your quarterback is not making simple reads and simple throws. Now, the last thing I'll say, and then I'm going to kick it back to you real quick because I think we need to have a quick talk about next year with Jalen Milroe. The fumble, you mentioned it. The fumble changed the game. And I know people have said and retorted, oh, well, they didn't score any points that drive. It doesn't matter. Alabama was on the 50-yard line. Yeah. Alabama had all the momentum, and Alabama was going to score on that drive. I had no doubt in my mind. They were either going to get another field goal or they were going to get a touchdown to put the game away and make it 24-13. But they didn't. They gave the ball back to Michigan, and that gave them life. And there's no excuse for fumbling in that situation. None whatsoever. And to me, that's where the game changed. It's not where the game was lost because there was plenty of blame to go around. Seth McLaughlin with the bad snaps, the O-line being shoddy at times, Jalen Milroe execution, coaching, all of that. But that play is where the momentum really, really shifted. And then on the final play of the game, I know Tommy Rees is getting slammed for that one. Again, he called up a touchdown drive. It wasn't executed well. J.C. Latham got pushed back. Seth McLaughlin had a bad snap, and then Jalen Milroe, instead of following his guard, just ran right into the back of Seth McLaughlin. If he goes to the left and follows his guard, more than likely it's an easy 6. So I know that was a lot, and if you have anything to add to that and respond to that, feel free. But I do want to kind of ask this. Jalen Milroe did improve a lot throughout the year, Graham. I think we can agree, but I think we can also agree he did not have a stellar performance against a good defense all year. Texas, Georgia, and Michigan. He did not play well. And even in Georgia, he came up big on that final drive. But we talked about it after the game. There were many times. The only reason that game was close because he wasn't executing the simple stuff. So going into next year, what do you want to see him improve at? And I don't want to be this guy of like him losing his job because I don't think that's going to happen, at least early. But if he doesn't improve, especially on the little stuff, I think a guy like Ty Simpson, who improved throughout the year and showed remarkable growth when he got in against Kentucky and UT Martin or Chattanooga, a guy like him or a guy like Dylan Lonergan, I think could really push him. So I kind of want to pose that question to you, Graham. What do you think he needs to work on?
Yeah, I want to just mention the final play. I will give Jalen Milroe the benefit of the doubt. It was a bad snap. Latham got blown up. I'm going to give Milroe the benefit of the doubt and just say that he tripped over Latham's legs. Like I will give that to Milroe. I mean, I'm not saying that was like anyway, but we don't know if he was going to hit the hole because he didn't really have much. He didn't really have much of an option. With both those things the way they were, I think it was a miracle that didn't go under his legs or that he didn't have to fall on it. But going for next year, I think that it's going to come down to Jalen Milroe deciding what kind of quarterback he's going to be. And I want to just throw out a comparison to a non-football player. A really good NBA player is Russell Westbrook. Okay, he's physical, really fast, can shoot the ball sometimes. Great drive of the ball, can facilitate some. He's a good basketball player. He really is, but he's not a championship level point guard. I think Jalen Milroe this offseason is going to have to decide whether he's going to be a championship level quarterback. I think he checks so many boxes. He is fast. He has a great arm. Okay, he can scramble better than any other quarterback probably in all of college football with the just ability of his legs. But you look at quarterbacks of the past, okay, and what did Nick Saban say to start the game in the just whenever that post question? What does Jalen
Pre-game
Milroe
interview.
Yeah, what does he need to do? Jalen Milroe needs to be a good point guard.
Point guard.
He's got to be able to get the ball to other playmakers, and I think at times this season he struggled tremendously to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that is his fault, some of it not his fault. But I think he has to decide whether he's going to be a championship level quarterback. I've got to better understand defenses so that I know when to get rid of the ball fast instead of just falling on it if I don't have to. Okay? Or throwing the ball away instead of always scrambling, to know when to take the chance and when to not. I think that he is a quarterback that, not that he is immature, but he just hasn't learned enough. I think that there are gaps in his knowledge and his intellect of football. I'm not saying he's stupid. I'm just saying he needs to play more. And I think that
he needs reps.
He needs reps. He needs experience, and he needs some coaching. And I think that when you look at it, if he can put all those pieces together, he can be a phenomenal college quarterback. He has all the tools, like I said, but he has to decide whether he's going to try and have the straw on his back or be the best point guard. I want to make sure that I get 10 assists a game. I want to make sure that this person's scoring and that person's scoring, and that I'm not the one that's going to be like taking the team back. So I think that's what it is, and I think the comparison probably goes back to Russell Westbrook when like 5-10 years ago when he was at his peak. But I think it's true. You have to be a championship level player, and that's not always the best player. I think you can look back at that and you can dig through that as much as you want to. That the best teams, Joe Burrow, phenomenal quarterback. The star was on his back because he was good at getting the ball out. He made the right plays. He made the right decisions. Same way with Mac Jones the next year. Okay, Bryce Young did not win a championship, but it never seemed to fall on. Come on, Bryce, you got to know better than that. Most of the time, I think to me that is what Milroe has to improve on. So, Hampton, I think I'm good with the Alabama game going forward, and just heartbroken. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I think you made some great points, Graham. I agree with all of that. That he has to level up. If Alabama is going to reach the heights and the aspirations it wants to reach, he has to level up. He's got to put in the work. He's got to become a film junkie and really understand the quarterback position, because it's not like Alabama didn't have open receivers last night. On the final drive before regulation ended, he had Kobe Prentice wide open. Been a 30-yard gain, maybe 40-yard gain. You get in field goal range, and Will Riker had been money all game. Take that, Chase Haney. And he threw it. He saw it late, then he threw it off his back foot.
Yeah.
It's not good enough. And 116 yards in a college football playoff semifinal game is not good enough either. Not with the weapons we have that wide. So I'm rooting for the kid. I want to see if he improves. I know he works hard, but there has to be a significant level of improvement for Alabama to be a championship team, because right now the offense is extremely, extremely limited with him at the helm. with some of the things that Tommy Rees feels like he can't call, but even the things that he does call, the lack of execution on his part is crippling at this point. So, real quick, Graham, because I've got to run here in a minute. Um, I'm going to give my brief thoughts on Washington, Texas, and then real quick, and then we're out, okay?
Yeah.
So, we both nailed this game. I didn't nail the pick, but we nailed how it would play out. We both thought it'd be a competitive game. We thought Washington was getting very disrespected by the media, with people just assuming Texas would win. And my key to the game, I said, if Washington's offensive line can handle Texas' defensive line, Washington has a chance to be really dangerous. And what did they do? They protected Michael Penix, and Michael Penix put on an absolute dazzling show of quarterbacking last night. 430 yards, I think only 9 incompletions, 2 touchdowns. Roma Dunze, Polk, McMillan, they ran wild on that Texas secondary, and their defense did enough to stifle Texas. I didn't think Quinn Ewers got fully comfortable in the game. Turnovers killed them. And Washington is going to the College Football Playoff National Championship despite all the odds. And I think people are going to pick Michigan a lot in that game. Don't count this Washington Husky team out. With a hot quarterback like Penix, they have as good a shot as anybody, Graham. Real quick, what are your thoughts on this game so we can get out of here and I can go eat?
Yeah, I think we talked about it a lot. It was the opposite of Alabama Michigan. It was a true shootout. It's who's going to have the ball last and put up the points last is going to be the one that wins the game. Man, Michael Penix just keeps proving the doubters wrong. I think that
Fantastic.
I think we talked about it. The pressure was on Texas to win, and I think that gave Washington so much room to just say, hey, leave it all out there because the pressure's not on us to win. To me, the biggest stat of the game was the time possession difference. Washington had the ball for 36 minutes and 20 seconds, had 13 more minutes than Texas. 13 more minutes. That's at least 2 solid drives when you look at it. I think that that to me that was the key of the game because usually the team that has the ball more wears down the opposing team's defense, and that's kind of what we saw. Washington just kept driving, kept putting up points, and I mean, truly making big plays. They were able to make plays down the field, which is what we talked about. Texas' struggle on defense was their secondary. Washington was able to take advantage of that. Credit to Michael Penix, credit to Kalen DeBoer, and Hampton. I'm going to throw it back to you with just this last little question. What if Washington wins a national championship and the Pac-12 dies? I mean, wouldn't that be a story to go out
quite
on?
Poetic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, wouldn't that be a story to go out on?
It absolutely would. And I'm glad they hung on because that was about to be a generational choke at the end if they gave up that game-winning touchdown to Texas. But we may or may not preview that game. I don't know if I have the heart in me to do it, but we appreciate everybody listening in this recap. It was therapeutic for us as it is for after many Bama losses to kind of get on here, talk about what went wrong and where Alabama goes from here. Credit to Michigan, credit to Washington. Going to be a fun national championship to watch, and we appreciate everybody who has tuned in this season. Again, if you haven't already, subscribe, leave us a like, leave us a comment, and hit that notification bell. The Pigskin Cafe may be gone for a little bit, but we hope you've had plenty to chew on and hope you have a great start to your 2024. So chew on that.